Alrighty, and welcome back to the Mother-Daughter Disney podcast. My name is Amanda. I'm here with my lovely mother.
Hi, I'm Janette.
And today we're going to be talking about Test Tracks. I'm super excited. Test Track is one of our favorite rides.
Oh, yeah.
In Epcot, so I love Test Track. So let's first start off. Before there was Test Track, there was the World of Motion. So the World of Motion was an attraction primarily designed by Ward Kimball and Mark Davis, who have designed many other of the Walt Disney World attractions. The premise of the ride was to be a humorous look into the history of transportation from the ancient days of foot power, literally what Wikipedia said, foot power, through time into the future. So General Motors signed a 10-year sponsorship deal for the ride and a move to compete with Ford, since at the time Disney had sponsored other attractions with Ford at the 1964 New York World's Fair.
World's Fair.
So General Motors was trying to get on the Disney, the Disney attractions as well. The pavilion's construction was a part of the initial construction of the Epcot Center itself, and the attraction was ready for the grand opening of the park on October 1st, 1982. And again, they had a big opening ceremony for basically. So the ride itself, visitors would board a moving 4 to 6 person omni-moving vehicles and would be taken through the scenes that were populated with the audio and animatronic figures and also like projection effects. It was a very slow moving ride, more reminiscent of a dark classic ride, I would say.
Okay.
It was not like Spaceship Earth, like the way that attraction moves, but it was similar, I would say, but very slow. I watched the whole video. It was like a 15-minute long ride, right?
Okay.
Watched a video of the whole ride. It was very slow moving. Is a whimsical look, it says online, at the history and achievements in transportation, showing scenes from the invention of the wheel right up to present day and beyond. Again, very similar to Spaceship Earth, how Spaceship Earth takes you to the history of human communications. So in a way, it makes sense, right? When Epcot opened, you had this ride of the history of human communications, and then this ride that was the history of human transportation. So you kind of had the two. Now, when it says it's being whimsical, it definitely was whimsical. There is a dragon in one of the scenes, right? It's like one of the scenes when it's showing a boat, right? Like boat transportation. Yeah. There's like a dragon that's like a life-size dragon that's like in the scene, which I thought was funny. There's another where like people are being robbed outside of a train to say how, it's like different transportation was like, cars and trains and stuff. Huh? There's a traffic jam between cars, a trolley, a horse, and all of these chickens everywhere. It's
oh my God, they were trying to make it.
This wild scene. I feel like where Spaceship Earth is a bit more serious. This one's a bit more funny, right? They're trying to be a little bit more funny.
There was no animatronics or
No, it was animatronics.
Oh, there was animatronics.
So like people talking, moving, same thing.
Oh,
just
they
like
were,
Spaceship
okay.
Earth. And honestly, the ride itself looked just like Spaceship Earth to a certain extent. Just focused, like the scenes were a bit more funny and again, focused on, transportation. So, and then again, there was like the narrator too going through the history of human transportation, how things were designed and invented.
Okay. Never got to see that.
And then the grand finale of the attraction attempted to predict a real future for transportation with Center Core, which was a sparkling metropolis that seemed to be in perpetual motion. And they used this pepper ghost illusion, kind of like how in Haunted Mansion, to sort of put you in a futuristic vehicle. So you sort of look to the side, and technically you were the Pepper's ghost, so to speak. So you'd see like your Omni vehicle that you're sitting in, you look to the side, and the vehicle would look like different, right? So you'd see like, a futuristic looking car that you were suddenly riding in.
Oh, that's interesting.
Now, I would say this grand finale scene was really trippy. There were a lot of flashing lights. The whole scene is like 5 minutes straight of flashing lights.
Oh, okay.
I was like, and it also sort of looked like the first Tron movie, because again, this was the 80s, right? So it was like that 80s aesthetic was overlaying this whole ride. So if you like the 80s aesthetic, you would have loved this ride, that's for sure. So then at the ride's conclusion, visitors disembarked into the Trans Center, which was an interactive area about new products and development by GM. And again, the ride was about 15 minutes long, which is pretty long, actually, especially even in today's scenarios. Yeah, I'd say a pretty long ride, 15 minutes. The Trans Center was full of exhibits about transportation and things surrounding it, and it had a very innovations-style feel to it with mini shows and interactive games that you could play as well. So in 1992, that was when GM's initial sponsorship, again, that 10-year sponsorship was expiring. And GM was in the process of conducting layoffs and cutbacks at the time in their own company. And so this was forcing GM to decide, are we going to sign another agreement or are we not going to sign another agreement? And they basically decided that they would sign another agreement with Disney as long as Disney would construct a new ride on the site of World of Motion. But it was actually kind of coincidental because Disney was already considering taking down a World of Motion and putting up a new ride anyway. Oh, okay. So both parties wanted a new attraction. So the new ride was going to be focused specifically around automobiles rather than the history of transportation and the prehistoric transportation and stuff like that. And and all that stuff. So again, mainly just on automobiles is what they both wanted it to be on. So the closure of World of Motion was announced in November of 1995, with World of Motion officially closing on January 2nd, 1996. GM continued its sponsorship with the replacement attraction, which was what we now know today as Test Track, and it was supposed to open within the first year and a half to 2 years. It was supposed to open at the end of 1997, just under 2 years is what it was going to say. And then just to note too, and then just get that out of the way, from 2012 to 2024, GM also they changed their sponsorship to sponsor the attraction through their Chevrolet division rather than just General Motors, which is, again, what we see today. We see the Chevrolet. But again, that's owned by General Motors, so it's the same company. Anyway, all right, let's get into Test Track 1.0, presented by General Motors, March 1999 to April 2012. So again, World of Motion, same area, closed down, and then they started building Test Track. In 1976, Disney Imagineers had visited GM's Milford Proving Grounds, and the Imagineers later made a second trip to the facility as they designed a Test Track. So again, after that attraction closed, basically everything inside the ride building was completely removed, and they had already started building the elevated track that's outside of the building that we see today as well too. And then again, this was the high-speed test portion of the ride. Work outside the building began in the fall of 1995, while the inside work began in the spring of 1996. The cars used on the ride were designed to resemble the look of a test car that is used to go through multiple safety tests. Throughout the construction of Test Track, numerous problems occurred, causing delays in the ride opening. The main first problem that the Imagineers had to overcome was that the wheels used in the ride vehicles could not stand up to the demand of the ride course and speed. So they had basically, because
it's not wheels.
It was not normal tires that are on the Test Track cars, like the tires that we have in our regular cars. So they basically had to Imagineer a new type of tire that could, withstand this ride.
The iron and the speed.
Yes. The second problem that was more critical, I would say, and caused an even lengthier delay, lasting a full year delay, was that for Test Track to run with the highest hour capacity possible, 29 ride vehicles would be needed to be run basically at the same time. But the ride's programming system could only handle an operating of a maximum 6 cars, so over the layout of the ride.
Wow, that's a big difference.
So because of that, this was the system itself that ran the ride was suffering from frequent software crashes. So the original software was completely scrapped. They had to start from complete scratch. Again, a year-long delay, right? They had this whole software they built, had to completely build a whole new software. And the programmers were able to get the computer system eventually to run with the 29 ride vehicles at once. Although there were a lot of rumors at the time from the press saying that it was being delayed because the outdoor segment was like a weather problem, that's why the cars are breaking down. But Disney has come out and said multiple times that the rain and the weather from outside was not why the ride was not running. I think it was just a software problem. But again, I guess they didn't want to admit it was a software problem.
Never thought about that. We've never been on that ride in the rain.
I don't think I have. I think maybe once when I was a kid, I feel like it was raining.
It may have sprinkled or something, but it was never a major
rain. I know when it's raining, the ride runs, but I believe it's very heavy rain or thunderstorms, obviously.
They have to shut it down, right.
So, all right, so in August 1998, again, remember the ride was supposed to open in the beginning of 1997. 1998, Disney announced that the opening of Test Track would be delayed again, right? So now people are waiting years for this. Officials told park guests that the technology was new and still being developed, which was actually the truth. Right. So reports were planned to reschedule the opening for 1999. But then after a lot of the problems were being resolved, Test Track did have a soft opening to the public on December 19th, 1998. But it was still breaking down every 2 seconds. Low key, kind of just like Rise of the Resistance that broke down every 2 seconds too when that opened. So every ride, I feel like at Disney breaks down when it's soft opening. Uh-huh. And the ride officially opened on March 17th, 1999 on St. Patrick's Day. How special is that? So even after its grand opening, the ride still suffered from frequent downtime, although eventually that improved, with software updates, things like that. So shortly after its opening, to improve capacity, Test Track was one of the first rides at Disney's to have the single rider line, because they realized with these 6-seaters, there were a lot of families of 4 and 2 that were coming. They were like, we need to alleviate this problem. So they did the single rider line. I thought that was interesting. It was one of the first ones that had it. All right, so now we're going to go into the queue and the ride a little bit, just because this was the first one. So during the queue, the first part of the queue, guests would view a sample, repair, and test shop. And again, in the queue, they would see a lot of different ways how cars were tested before they would be released. And there would be different tests for tires, for car doors, for different things in the chambers, radio receivers. You see all these crash dummies kind of as you're walking through the queue.
Lots of noise.
Yep. And at the end of the queue, you'd be brought into a briefing room, which is common, especially at the time for Disney queues, that you go in, everyone would be shoveled into a little room together. You'd be shown this little video. In the video, they would say, this is how automobile testing facilities are done. And you are going to be part of the testing today of these cars, right? And then, technicians would be setting up the tests as well. So small videos of each test would be shown. And then, the final surprise test was a video of a car crashing into a barrier. And so, that was how the ride was going to end, right? All right. So then guests would get onto the ride itself. You get into your little test cars, right? You check your little seatbelts. You go through the hill climb. Then you go to the car suspension, testing over different types of road surfaces. Then you'd also do the anti-locking brake testing as well, too. And then you would have the 3 environmental chambers. There was the heat chamber that featured 192 heat lamps, the cold chamber, and the corrosion chamber, which featured robots on both sides that would spray yellow mist. To this day, I'm not 100% sure what the corrosion chambers are really doing. I guess just to show like how cars rust, basically. So, all right. So then the handling of the car was test. You would climb a set of hills with these blind turns, and you'd be increasing by 10% each time. And at the top, the car would almost crash into this like semi-truck before swerving out of the way. And then you'd be brought to your final test, which was, again, the barrier test, right? When the car would crash into the wall. You would line up across the barrier, you would accelerate towards it, and then right before you'd hit the barrier, the doors basically would open, and you would go out onto the track that was outside. And then you go through the whole track, you're reaching speeds of up to almost just 65 miles per hour before you'd be taken back to the docking station to be let off the ride. So, all right, so that was, again, so from 1999 to 2014, that was, or 2012, sorry, March 1999 to April 2012, that was our test track 1.0. So then on January 6, 2012, Disney Parks announced the plans to renovate Test Track during the second and third quarters of the year to reopen by the fall of 2012. That's when we have Test Track 2.0 presented by, this is the switch from General Motors to Chevrolet. So now Chevrolet, still owned by General Motors, same people basically. But again, there is a new marquee that we have to the General Motors Chevrolet as well too. So the setting and the theming of was the main update to the ride. So the ride track itself and the ride vehicles themselves were unchanged, just repainted for the most part. So, and they did do general maintenance, obviously, as well to it. But again, the main thing was the setting and the theming of the ride. So the new additions of the ride included a pre-show area where guests would design, I say in quotes, a new car for testing in the Chevrolet Design Center. They would then board the test tracks, again, the ride vehicles themselves, and you'd be riding in what they say in quotes, a SimCar, like a simulated car, to see how your design that you just made would fare up to the center's driving course. So you would use your Magic Band, your park ticket, or they would just give you like a little RFID card, and you, as your design key, these doors would open. You have this massive like iPad type structure basically, and then you would have all these little options to design your car. It was a set amount of time, and it said that time did change depending upon how busy the attraction was, which I thought was kind of funny. So then you can design your Chevrolet custom concept vehicle.
Keeping you busy while you were in the queue.
Yep, and this means that your car would be tested on 4 performance attributes, which was capability, efficiency, responsiveness, and power. So then again, same thing, again, same queue, right? So then once you're done designing your car, you go through the queue, you get on the car. And then also just note too, people who were in Lightning Lane designers, they would just go straight to the main design studios. And then for those who are doing single rider, they would have a pre-designed car for them. So you'd scan your badge and it would just give you like, there was like 3 or 4 pre-designed cars that were just randomly select for you. So you didn't really get to design if you were doing it single rider. So, all right. So then we get onto the car. And then when you got to the car too, you just tap again at the gate and it would link your car with the SIM car or like the physical car you're about to get into with your SIM car. All right. Then you get onto the ride itself and you're being taken through the digital testing environment of the sim track, right? The simulation track. And along the way, the designers will find out how their design choices directly affect the Chevrolet custom concept vehicle's performance. Again, based those 4 different tests: capability, efficiency, responsiveness, and power. The first is capability. So in the capability test, the car first connects to OnStar while passing a snowflake on the left, which is composed of the World of Motion logos, which I thought was interesting because I did not know that at the time. And now we'll never know because now it's gone.
That's right, it's gone now.
Then it would accelerate past a rain projection and it would skid out of control. And then again, you would kind of come up again too, and then again they're basically promoting OnStar, which is a Chevrolet thing, right? So if you get into an accident, OnStar would know that you've gotten into an accident and would tell you, it's like, do you need help or something like that? Basically, again, there was promoted by Chevrolet and General Motors, so trying to promote their stuff. Fair enough, all credit to them for that. So then you get into this little futuristic city, and then that was supposed to look like the World of Motion, right? And then at the end of the capability test, there would be this like screen. It would say how your car did for the capability test versus other people in the car. So for instance, if you were like a family of 2 and 2, the people in front of you designed their car, and then your car is going to be different from their car. So you can see like which car did better, right? All right. So then the next
competition.
Yeah. So the next test is the efficiency test. So in the first part, the cars are scanned for optimum eco-efficiency. The second test performs an aerodynamic test on the vehicle. This was like the environmental test from the first one. So literally, you're just going through those same 3 little rooms and things. You're just kind of seeing screens of things on the car. Like it's nothing too crazy, I would say. Then the final test with the hyperspectrum imagining takes place. And then this is on either side of the walls. Designers can spot a WED performance text inscribed on one of the tires in honor of WED, Walter Elias Disney's initials, and the original name of Walt Disney Imagineering. Again, didn't know that, didn't see that either. So
Nope,
now we'll
didn't pay
never see
attention.
it. And again, at the end of the capability, and at the end of the efficiency test, your score would be displayed. All right, the third test was responsiveness. This is when the SimCar would accelerate around those hairpin turns, and they had these laser projected trees that were kind of around. Again, just like the other one when you're increasing by 10% for responsiveness, same idea. After the first right turn, there was a sign on the left that can be seen that was said Motion Lane 82, General Motorway 99, and Bowtie Boulevard 12, which were all references to the 3 attractions that had been in the building and their opening years as well. Afterward, 2 more signs can be seen after a few more turns, one with the turn right to go left quote from the 2006 Disney Pixar film Cars.
Wow.
And one with the...
Whoever notices any of this stuff.
And the other one, there's a sign that said Beaver Crossing. I do remember the Beaver Crossing one because I thought it was cute. Yeah. There's a Beaver Crossing which references a GM plant in Beaverton, Oregon, where Imagineers visited GM employees to help with the original test track. Now, when I was doing research for this podcast, we had just seen Hoppers like a few days before. And in our Hoppers podcast, I had said, Hoppers, the fictional city. Turns out Beaverton is a real city in Oregon. I just didn't know that. So I apologize to anyone who is from Beaverton or from Oregon that I just didn't know Beaverton was a city. I just assumed it was fictional. So as many places in movies are fictional, I just assumed it was fictional. But apparently it's a real place in Oregon. So shout out to Beaverton, Oregon. I don't know if we have any Beaverton, Oregon listeners out there, but I hope everyone's doing well. Yes. And that was what that Beaver Crossing sign was in reference to. So, all right. So the SimCar would then enter a tunnel. Same thing again. The track is the same, right? So you pretend to hit the semi-truck and you start
get out of the thing.
So then you would see your results for the responsiveness test. And then we would go to our final test, which was the power test, right? So the SimCar stops for a moment, then accelerates straight forward. Again, just like the other ride of the barrier test, you just go outside and you do the whole track to 65 miles an hour. However, out here now, there's this big opening area where Chevrolet would put a bunch of their cars in the center to kind of showing off some of their new models of the cars. I didn't notice that. I remember one time we saw that and she was like, wow, that's cool. This space used to just be empty. There used to just be nothing, right?
Now they have all the new cars.
Yeah, like there. It was just backstage area, the employee parking lot, things like that. And then they put some cars out there, which was kind of cool. Apparently they had a lot of World of Motion like logos around here too that I just never noticed, if I'm being quite honest.
Wish we could go back and ride it again so I could see all this.
I know, right? So, and then the last little thing that paid tribute to World of Motion was that there was a logo that said a bunch of letters. It said FN2BFRE. And this text was a reference to the ride, to World of Motion's theme song, where that was said, it's fun to be free. So that's what that was. It's like supposed to be a license plate. It's fun to be free. And that was the part of the theme song of World of Motion. And then again, so then you come back all the way back in, and then you would see like your overall score, right? So you'd see your score for power and then your overall score too. So then, and then after you left the ride as well, you could also scan your badge like in this big room basically, and you could see your points again for your overall score. And then it would also show like the highest scored car of the day, the one of the last hour as well too. And some of these cars, I don't know how they would get like 500, 600 points because it was hard to get points. I think the highest we ever got was to go over 200, 250 or something. But it was hard to get. I was like, how are you guys getting like 500 or 600 pointed cars? I was like, what are you guys doing to these cars? It was crazy. But anyway, so the ride closed on April 15th, 2012. And then as soon as it closed, they had these barriers that are kind of around it as well too, so that people couldn't get too close to it anymore. This is when they were getting ready to do Test Track 3.0. There was randomly a musical show called Test Track All-Stars, which was added in front of the former main entrance to Test Track and then closed right before Test Track 3.0 opened. And I don't know anything about this, which is crazy because I feel like I'm pretty on Disney Instagram, and I didn't hear anyone talking about Test Track All-Stars. But apparently there's a musical show in front of it for a short period of time. Okay. So anyway, so the refurbished attraction, so then the ride closed. And then that was because on September 9th, 2023, it was announced that Test Track would be receiving another retheming, this one inspired by the original World of Motion attraction at Epcot, with General Motors staying on as a sponsor, still as Chevrolet as well. And this is the Test Track 3.0 2025 to present day. So further concept art was released on April 5th, 2024. And then again, after the attraction closed. So then it was announced that the third iteration would reopen with new scenes and new musical score and more. So Test Track 3.0 officially reopened on July 20th, 2025. So again, the ride itself, the cars and the track have fully stayed the same. Again, is mainly the retheming of the setting and, and everything else that has changed. So, all right. So what is the narration of this one? So as the car speeds up the hill, the guests are introduced to a male narrator and a female AI car. The car then enters a city landscape, which turns into a digital world to show how the car sees the world. So for instance, like if you're driving, like the best way I can describe is like if you're driving a Tesla, like Teslas have those like awareness things around them where it can see everything that's around it. That's what it's like. This is what the car sees, right? And I say in quotes. So the car then enters a city landscape, and again, it shows this digital world. The car accelerates and swerves past a digital car before slowing down, again, kind of showing how like an AI car would be able to sense its surroundings. The area would then go black again, and then the smart car would then change, would understand like where the car is being placed again before it accelerates again. The car then approaches a futuristic house as the narrator describes a future where you can design your own car from your garage. The car then passes mirrors, and the AI car, like the female voice in the car, plays around these various designs on the mirrors to show, it's like, oh, this is what the car could look like, right? This is what I could look like. And this is supposed to pay ode to that similar fic in World of Motion, or like that Pepper's ghosting, where you're sitting in the car and you look to the side and you see the car. It's like, this is what the future car is going to look like, right? So that's what it's supposed to kind of mimic. The car then enters a wooded highway area where the narrator lets the AI car take a drive, in which she responds, "It's always fun to be free." Again, that callback to World of Motion. The car kind of speeds up through these woods, goes to the tunnel. Same semi-truck has been there for years at this point, right? Always dodging out of that semi-truck. All right, according to this ride, it's like you're almost going to hit a semi-truck, apparently. I've never almost hit a semi-truck, let me tell you. All right, the car then approaches a futuristic car describing the possibilities of the future, like a real car. Like you can see the car, right? It enters a giant dome projecting images of a futuristic city with flying cars, and then after a small stop, you go into it, like it launches you into the outdoor portion of the ride. Again, kind of similar thing, same thing basically. They have some cars on the outside too. Although apparently unlike earlier versions of the ride, the wall to the outside is now always open in the open position, whereas before the walls were always closed. And they said this is due to an incident during the cast member previews for the reopening of the ride, where the sliding doors did not open and the vehicle crashed into them, injuring the riders on board.
Oh my God.
So I don't think anyone was seriously injured, but people obviously got very hurt during it. So they decided to not risk it anymore. So that's fair. And then after you get off the ride, there is now a themed mural that is located as a callback to the original 1982 Epcot Center as well. And again, like the previous version, the World of Motion logo is prominent and being used again as a symbol all around the ride instead of like an Easter egg as well too. So all right, so that is where we are today with Test Track. Now I will say, I'm going to give my opinion first, then my mom can give her opinion. I do not like the 3.0 edition of Test Track. It's just my personal opinion. I think it is very boring, especially in comparison to the 1.0 edition, where you are the test dummy, you're going through the tests and you're learning how cars are tested. I feel like it's just a little boring because you're listening to these two people talk to each other. You're not in the conversation. You're just listening to them talk to each other. And one of them is supposed to be AI, which I think is really funny too. So I don't know, nothing against talking to AI, right? But it's like, I just think it's a little odd, I suppose. I feel like it's supposed to be an ode back to World of Motion, but when you look into what World of Motion was, which was a history of transportation, it doesn't really go through the history of transportation at all. If anything, it kind of just, I guess, goes through the idea of like the future of transportation. Again, like the AI car designing a car at home, and like what the futuristic, like maybe flying cars are going to look like, and like how AI cars, currently drive today or something. But otherwise, I'm like, it doesn't really go through the history of anything. Like I thought we were going to have more history of transportation in this ride. We don't, I guess. I was just expecting something different. And especially too, when you watch those videos of World of Motion from back in the 80s, it is nothing like what the ride is, right? It's like if anything, just some of the theming and some like there's like a lot more,
right. They
like
paid some
notes
homage
of it.
back to it, but that was about it.
But I would say it's still a ride completely of its own, right? It's like I wouldn't say it's based off World of Motion at all. I would say maybe it was like it just has elements of World of Motion. Now the thing is though, the best one in my opinion still is 1.0. I think 1.0, that's what the ride was built to be, was 1.0, right? It was built to be the test track, built to be you or the test dummy, going through the test, learning about how cars are tested and how they have to pass all these tests to make it to the road.
Right.
I still think that is the strongest test track because that is what it was built to make. That's what the story was. I think it's the most interesting one. It's the most educational one as well too.
It is the most educational.
Yeah, when you learn how cars are actually what cars have to go through so that you understand the safety of the cars that you're in, especially modern day cars as well too. Like my husband's a big car person, and it's like for cars to actually be on the road in modern day, they have to pass a lot of things to make it to the road legally, right?
And be kept up.
Yeah, so it's like I think that to me is the most interesting, the most educational. I liked the 2.0 a lot too because I thought that was fun. Very creative, had the little competition element.
I like the 2.0 because it got rid of the noise in the queue. The noise.
Well, yeah, so
you stand online for 2 hours with the noise in the queue and you've had enough.
The thing is, though, I still think that, but that was the whole experience, though, too.
Yes,
like,
it
that's
was,
how it
but
was.
I didn't like it.
But yeah, so a 2.0, I thought the designing of the car was really fun. I wish you could, the only thing about 2.0 I didn't like was that I felt like there was a lot of pressure to design the car to a certain extent. Like you were designing it so quickly. It's like sometimes it's
well, we're designing so quickly, and they still put the little element of competition
I almost
in there.
wish you could design the car elsewhere and then bring the car with you. Right? It's like you could design it on your. I think in theory, it's like you can design it on your phone and like have fun doing it on your phone, and then connect it when you're on the ride or something like that. Yeah. And then it's like if you don't want to do that, then maybe then you just take one of the pre-made cars because I feel like there was like a lot of time pressure to like make this car in like 2 minutes, right?
Maybe some of the pre-made ones were the ones that were 500 points.
They were not. No? Trust me, they were not. Okay. But I thought it was so fun because there's so much you could do when you're designing the car, and that was like so fun to see like when you added certain things.
Well, I also think that it was interesting because, like I said, when you're in queue, it is also another educational thing.
It is, yeah,
where you're trying to figure out how to get it to be fast, how to get it to have enough power, but yet look good. Everybody wants their car to look
and then it's like horrible for the environment or something like that. So it's like finding the balance. I thought was just
that
really
was educational,
and I really liked that. Yeah. So that's why I say with 3.0 when we went on, I was like,
there isn't much education.
The queue is boring. I thought the ride itself was extremely boring as well too. I thought the narration was boring. Again, this is just my opinion. I know there are some people out there who probably thought it was really fun.
I got off and I liked it. I said, "Oh, that was fun. We can do it again. Really Let's do it again."
Well, which one do you think is your favorite out of this?
I think the 1.0 was probably my favorite. No. 2.0 was my favorite.
Yeah.
Yes, because like I said, all those times I spent on the 1.0, I am.
Well, that was also before we really did.
I didn't like the queue.
Stuff.
The ride itself was great.
Well, give it the queue then, because it's like the queue doesn't matter as much.
No, without the queue, I liked 1.0. Yeah. I really did like 1.0. I thought it was very interesting. And I got to tell you, I thought it was just innovative in everything that they did, of how they showed you everything and how it went. And then like at the end, the thrill was at the end. When you got to the end, the first time you're ever on that ride, those doors open and you get out there at 65 miles an hour. And people say, 65 miles an hour, what's the big deal? You're in a car at 65 miles an hour. When you are outside and that air is hitting you at 65 miles an hour, it's like being on a motorcycle. It is different.
Well, you're also elevated too.
Yes, so you're elevated, you're moving. It is different when you hit it at 65 miles an hour. So that was the thrill of it. The last ride I thought was just a ride.
Yeah.
It was. But it was, to me, it was fun. It was just a ride.
But yeah, so just my opinion, but I do not like 3.0. I hope that after a couple of years, they will revise it again.
Put some more education
back. Else.
I think the education part missing is the worst part.
Because even if they did the education of it, of saying like, this is how AI cars work, or this is like what I guess they're
evolving from.
Well, I suppose they do show the benefits of the AI car, how the AI car can sense the road and how it can protect you because of that. But I feel like it's not as obvious, I suppose, as like, the 1.0 and the 2.0 is the thing. So I don't know. So I just find the storyline to be a little bit boring, especially when I know what we had before and I just preferred it from before. Because normally I'm not one to like, I kind of like change. I think change can be very exciting to a certain extent. I think it's sad for things to go and stuff. But I'm usually very adaptable to change. So again, I think 1.0 to 2.0,
right now AI is still evolving. So when they're trying to explain and trying to do, AI is a different concept. So maybe as time goes on, like you said, if they do make some changes to it, it will go deeper into AI and deal with some of the stuff that's going on with AI now.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. But again, I would definitely suggest looking up the World of Motion video because it is hilarious to go back and watch that and then be like, this ride is supposed to be based on that. Yeah, because I was going to say, did you go to Epcot in the 80s?
No, I did not go to Epcot when it first opened. The first time we went to Epcot was in 1995. And by that time, Test Track was closed.
Yeah, I was going to say it would have been closed.
It didn't open again until after that. So I did not see any of that.
No, that's okay. Again, it's just interesting. And it's like that, watching that video was funny. And when I saw that dragon in the water, I was just like, wow, they really went whimsical with this one. It's like, we did not see a dragon in Spaceship Earth. So, but it really is just like Spaceship Earth, right? Yeah. It was just like Spaceship Earth.
That's interesting. I would have liked to have seen that.
Yeah, very interesting, honestly. But all right, this is normally get into a little bit of Disney news, but we are very much pre-recording because I have a bunch of trips coming up basically for the most part. We'll have some fun episodes based on those trips. So no Disney news for today. So do you have a Disney memory for today's podcast?
Oh, yeah. When I went on Disney 1.0. We went on Disney 1.0 and I had a souvenir in my hand in a bag.
In the Disney bag?
It was in one of those Disney souvenir bags. And I put it between my legs while we were on the ride because I had to keep it secure. So I held it and I put it between my legs and I was wearing a pair of light cotton beige capris. We went through the testing rooms and the heat from the testing room melted the bag onto my pants. But I didn't know that was happening. So when I got off the ride, there was a cast member there. And when I got off the ride, the whole inside leg of my pants looked like I was bleeding. They almost had a heart attack.
Yeah, they thought she was like losing her leg.
Yes, I thought they were going to have a heart attack. The girl's eyes bugged out of her head, and I'm looking at her like, what the hell's going on? And I look down, and everything is covered in like red, but there was blue in there too. So I realized, I picked up the bag, and the whole side of the bag had melted. So I knew that from that point forward, you don't ever go in there and put anything plastic next to your pants while you're going through the ride. Luckily, once I washed them, came right off.
I know. We were all, and that was a funny moment.
It was.
I would say for mine, I remember the first time I went on the ride, because like as a kid, you're like, are we really going to crash into a wall, right? But then I remember too, it's just like, because I remember I didn't know if the outside portion was beginning or the end of the ride, and no one would tell me it's a thing, because they wanted to be like a surprise, I suppose. I didn't know that though at the time, but I remember too just thinking, it's like, well, people are getting off the ride, so it's just like, and like, you know, my parents have been, and Luke has been on it before,
they're still living.
And they still got off the ride, right? So I remember just being a little scared because I didn't understand the concept of it. But I do remember that first time when like the doors open, and you go outside, you're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, right? This is just wild. Well, just wild beans is all. So wild, so thrilling though. Again, the ride still is thrilling, right?
Yes,
it still is very
has
fun.
that thrill.
Even when you go through the inside portion,
that's what I said. When I got off,
thrilling.
I was like, okay, I like that.
Well, another memory is too, I remember during 1.0, we did single rider. I was very young to be doing single rider, but I was old enough, so we were all in different cars. And I remember the ride, we were, you know, when you get to that part, it's like you're supposed to be increasing. It says increasing by 10%, increasing by 10%. We were not increasing, we were slowing down. And the people I was with was just like, is something wrong? And in my head, it's just like, I think something is wrong. But I was kind of a kid. And the ride did come to a complete stop. And then if you looked around though, because the room used to be fully open, because again, you're supposed to be test dummies, so it wasn't all closed off the different areas. So I remember looking down off the hill, and I could see like my mom and my brother in their cars, and like, you know, a few cars behind me. And it was funny because the ride ended up continuing on a few minutes later, but we sat there with the lights on for about like maybe 10 minutes or so. But it was just so funny thinking, it's like you used to be able to look around that big room, whereas now they have walls and barriers between all the sections.
When that happens.
Yeah, but it was funny though. I remember being like increasing by 10%. It's like, I think we're slowing down actually. But all right, we will end today's podcast with our Disney quote. Our quote today is, they're driving right by and they don't even know what they're missing. Said that and where it's from.
No,
I had to do a driving quote, of course. So,
oh, wow.
Lightning McQueen said this quote in the first Cars movie, of course, referencing people who are driving, you know, they're driving right by life and they don't even know what they're missing, right?
Wow,
so that's what he had said. Great quote from our King Lightning McQueen. But thanks everyone for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. Make sure you give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. And let us know on our social media, what do you think of Test Track? Which one is your favorite of Test Track? Is it 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, or is it World of Motion? Do you wish we just took down the whole building and put back World of Motion? It'd be a big construction project if they did that. We'd love to know what you think of Test Track, but until then, we'll see you